That's unsettling, but I guess let's begin. Let's begin! Welcome to Beltane! Shit's fucked up and bullshit. What can I say? This is Beltane. This is, the humpery time of the year. But before we get into all of that, let's talk a little bit about this situation that we're in, which is Earth and life, and where things go wrong and it takes a half hour to fix it. I am Meagan Angus. Welcome to the Beltane class. This is the Wheel of the Year series for 2021, and we are teaching this class from Seattle, Washington, which is unceded ancestral Duwamish territory. If you would like to learn more about that situation, you're here in Seattle or the Puget Sound area, go check out Real Rent Duwamish. It is a place where you can pay rent for being able to live in the fabulous and beautiful city that is Seattle, Washington. If you are not in the Puget Sound area, check out the Native American support groups that are in your area. Assuredly, there's a place where you can pay rent to the folks who were the original stewards of the land that you live on now. Just a little bit of addressing things like reparations. When we do stuff like that as a group, as individuals or a collective, that is not reparations. Reparations comes from the government. But this is a way of acknowledging that there's an imbalance and acknowledging that you are currently benefiting from the crappy decision making of people that came before you. It's not that it's your fault. You didn't take the land from the Native Americans. Somebody before you did that, but you are currently benefiting whether you asked for that benefit or not. So this is just a way of addressing that kind of stuff. Okay. Since we have spent an entire half hour screwing around with technology, which clearly hates me, and I don't know why, we are going to jump right into this. Okay, so let us begin with witches' work. What are we doing at Beltane? We are focusing on, are you ready to go? Did you get your tea? Did you get your journal? And are you comfy? Take your pants off? Do all the things like the incense? Okay, good, because we're getting started. You had a half hour to figure that out. The major themes that we are working with at Beltane season are fertility, fecundity, and action. And when we talk about that, we want to look at these words and consider the metaphors that they can be from lots and lots and lots of different angles, because a lot of the overt symbology of Beltane season is about sex and sexuality, and to a lesser extent, sensuality. And that's really, really important stuff. But not everybody is engaging in that activity for whatever reason. So we don't want to give the impression that that is the only way, or that that is the rightest way to work within our Beltane symbolism and ritual and activities. There's lots of different things that we can do during Beltane, but sex and sexuality and sensuality between humans in particular is a big part of the symbolism and the ritualism and all of the stuff that we're doing when we work with Beltane energy. So we are talking about fertility and virility. Now, fertility and virility, again, are energies that all humans can express and possess. Anyone can be fertile and anyone can be virile. This is something that we talk about in all of our classes, where we're talking about that the difference between Venusian or Venus energy and Mars or Martian energy. And this is about that stuff that is in us that yearns or draws something out of something else, that pulls in, that gestates, that wants, that desires. And our Mars energy is our extrovert energy. It's the thing in us that thrusts and goes and gets the thing that it wants. And that's really the energies that we are stirring up here in Beltane season, fertility and virility. Another way of saying this is that we are bringing polarities together. It's really important also, as we move through this season, there is a lot of binary polarity imagery, a lot of black and white, yes, no, male, female, this, that. But we know that the world is multifold. We know that humans are present in an infinite number of ways. So when we are talking about this kind of stuff, what I really want you to think of is, where are you? What are you? Who are you? How are you? And what are things, places, people, ideas that feel like they are across the circle from you? And how do you rub up on that stuff? How do you bring those 2 points together into something? Moreover, we see a lot of this type of energy happening, whether it's sacred marriages, whether it is plow entering the soil, whatever it is. We see a lot of this, this and that, black and white, yes, no, on, off, hot, cold, polarities being brought together in this. But again, we can work with this idea of bringing polarities together as within systems that have many polarities, not just 2. Other things that we are seeing at this time of year, or the other big work that we are doing, rites of passage type stuff, divination, protection, opening and restoring paths of exchange. So the rites of passage really sit with a lot of this sex, sexuality, sensuality coming into union with polar opposite from you type stuff. Again, it does not have to be sex, but it often is. And sex and sexuality is absolutely a type of rite of passage, whether that is about you coming into a time period where you feel sexual urges and you didn't before, whether that's about you moving into a portion of your life where you don't feel sexual urges anymore, but you used to. Or perhaps you've come into a portion of your life where you are beginning to experience your sexuality in a totally new and different way from how you have before. Or maybe you didn't experience it before and now you are experiencing it. All of these moments are types of rites of passage, and they are places where we kind of walk through a gateway of experience, as it were, and, from that point forward, we are different. We know something new about the world that we didn't know before. We know something different about ourselves. And we can't unknow that stuff. That's not information that's going to go away. So we've changed and we've grown into whatever the next form of ourself is. And again, this doesn't have to be sex, sexuality, or even sensuality oriented. This can also just be the type of rite of passage that says, I'm old enough to stay out later at night. A rite of passage that says, I'm at an age now that I need to take care of my body differently, or my sleep cycles are different. It could even be something like that. Rites of passage also include folks who have been curious about paganism and want to become initiated into some type of a path, or the rite of passage of learning the secrets of a philosophy, learning the secrets of a trade also would be a rite of passage. Other things we're doing, divination and protection. This is really straightforward, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but a lot of the rituals a lot of the ritual work that we're doing within Beltane and like festival forms center around divination and protection. We see these included in a lot of different holidays, so there is that as well. But really, when we look at the next line here, opening and restoring paths of exchange, this is where a lot of our divination and protection work comes in. What I'm talking about with this sentence is specifically opening up pathways for seafaring and for merchants. And we've already been talking about this. If you are a Patreon, you've been listening to the podcast for the last few weeks, you know that we have already started into the season where, there's the seafaring holidays that have already come up, and holidays centered around the ocean, around ocean deities, and around ocean passageways and traveling by ocean and blessing boats and things like that. Well, this was also an incredibly vital channel or conduit for merchants and for trade, whether that was specifically and strictly monetary or cultural or what have you. The oceans and waterways around the planet have made it possible for civilizations that would otherwise not have been in communication with each other to communicate directly and trade back and forth and all of that stuff. And that also is a type of energetic exchange, we could even say a rite of passage, definitely bringing polarities together, right? I've got me and my glass beads that I make over here, and I get to trade with somebody who lives way, 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 way over there that I might never actually meet in person, but we met each other through our crafts that we are exchanging through a merchant. As we move through Beltane season, obviously we start with Taurus. Maybe that's not obvious for you. I shouldn't actually say that. But we start with Taurus, and then we move into Gemini. And Taurus is very much about making money, material goods, all that stuff. But Gemini absolutely rules merchants, trade, commerce, things like that. So we see in this season this whole emphasis of this idea of it's not just about rubbing bits against each other, goddess bless, God's bless, but it's also about rubbing a bunch of different kinds of bits together. So fertility and virility in all of its forms, bringing polarities together, whether that's 2, 3, 4, or more. Rites of passage, meaning I've changed and I've left that form and I'm now moving into a different form. Divination and protection, and in particular about and around opening and restoring paths of exchange, traveling, moving out into the world, leaving home, and going and sort of discovering the world on our own, which also, again, is a type of rite of passage. Okay. So this is the Sabbath sign, and I've been not including this, I don't know why, but I am now. Ta-da! Enjoy. So this is the sign for Beltane season. These were these signs that are connected to the 8 Sabbats were invented sometime in the last 100-ish years. I do not know by who. I have been trying to figure out where they originated. As far as I know, they are totally modern in creation, as far as I know. They are certainly based on old designs, from the occult and metaphysical and pagan world. But I don't think that any of these were actually aligned with something more than 100 years ago. What I love about this is, one, it looks like a sprig of something growing out of the ground and starting to establish itself, and it has a few leaves on it. You know, this very much looks like, a springy, spring-oriented growth of some kind of a plant coming up out of the ground, and it's getting its shoots out there. It's very eager to be up and out. But it also really reminds me of an oxtail. And we are certainly going to talk a lot about oxen and bulls and cattle and cows as we move through this holiday. Other names for Beltane. Walpurgisnacht is approximately how you pronounce that. If any Germans would like to bring me over to Germany to teach me by hand how to say that word correctly, I really appreciate it. Walpurgisnacht, Hexennacht is another name for this night. The Feast of the Sacred Marriage, and asterisk next to that, we have a boatload of sacred marriages, and so a lot of times it's not the Feast of the Sacred Marriage, it's the Feast of, Blodeuwedd and Lou, or the Feast of Nana and Balder, or what have you. So it'll be named after the feast of the couple that is getting together that day. Colin Mai and Colin Hoff are both Welsh, I believe, for May Day. Literally means the month of May. May Day is another name for this day. Rodenica is the Slavic name for the holiday that falls at this time. That's a big flower, springy sort of celebration thing. And then here's a couple of other spellings from Irish and from Scottish folk, and it's pronounced approximately La Beltane, but I'm sure that I'm not exactly correct on that. So again, please, as punishment, fly me to Europe so that I am forced to learn the granular details of exactly how to pronounce Gaelic Irish and Gaelic Scottish Gaelic. Let's talk about these a little bit before I flip on to the next one. Okay, Hexanacht really literally means the night of hexing, the night of magic. Walpurgisnacht is dedicated, it means Walburga's night. And there is a saint, Walburga, but Walburga is a Teutonic mother goddess that was worshipped by Germanic pagan groups for a very long time. Ultimately, Walpurgisnacht, Hexennacht, Rodenica, even to a lesser extent, is really in reference to this idea from the Middle Ages that on May Day Eve, on this night, the witches jumped on their brooms and rode about menacing the good Christian folk of Europe and Earth. And we do. Let me be extremely clear about that. We absolutely do. But you know, it has this air of like the demons are rising out of hell and all of that stuff. And sure, that's fine. But really, it was one of the that all comes from the fact that Beltane was one of the longest lasting festivals into the deep Christian era. That was like, you cannot stomp out this festival. They're not gonna not do it. And so, instead, it was like, let's give it the worst reputation possible. What's interesting is, this also connects to a group that we talk about at Samhain named the Furious Host, or the She, the Wild Hunt. It is thought at Samhain that that collection of entities and archetypes come up from the underworld journey. They come up from the Shadowlands, the lands of the dead, and they come here to our physical reality, and they sort of run amok through the end of fall, all of winter, and are sort of disappearing by the time we get to spring. Beltane is the day, officially, that they go back to that place over there. And so there is doorways, really, we could say, at Beltane and Samhain. And if you look at a wheel, these two holidays are exactly the opposite from each other. They're exactly across from each other, like two polarities from each other. And so these are two places where the doors open and close, and there is tons of literature, tons of folklore about people being stolen and returned hundreds of years later, and, you know, on one, they leave on Samhain and they come back on Beltane, or vice versa. So there is a lot here about, you know, these creatures and entities of magic and mysticism riding out on this night and really having a great time. Okay. Let's move on. Do I want to go to this yet? No, I don't. I'm actually going to scooch us back to here. Okay. Before we go on to this, let's talk a little bit about the forms of the goddess and the god that we really are specifically working with at this time of year. So in our goddess arc that we work with, the goddess is in the form of the crone all through winter, and at spring equinox, they change forward into the maiden, and they are refreshed and renewed and reborn as this innocent, curious, naive, brash, excited, child version of themselves, or youthful version of themselves. And as spring progresses forward, that character matures and they develop more and more. They become more self-aware, they become more grounded. At Beltane, the goddess is really in this place that's right on the cusp of adulthood. And that's certainly a rite of passage moment for a lot of us. The god form, or the god's form, on the other hand, is rising in the sky just like the sun. And at winter solstice, we see the great battle between the Holly King and the Oak King. The Oak King kills the Holly King and sort of takes over the reins of everything and starts out that portion of the year very, very low. That's winter solstice, Yule, where the sun is at the very lowest point on the sky in the Northern Hemisphere. Every day from that point, the sun gets higher and higher. The days get longer and longer. At spring equinox, we have equal night, equal day. And then every day forward from spring equinox, the days are longer than the nights, all the way up to summer solstice. And so the point between Beltane and summer solstice is thought of as kind of the peak, or the start of the peak of the sun's power for the year. This is what we might think of as the last few ticks on the first big hill of the roller coaster before we go down into the rest of the year. And so the sun is really surging with power at this point. Now, out in the physical world, no, we're not baking with sun heat yet, but we will be in a couple of months because it'll have built up by then. But we are witnessing sort of the height of the sun's aspect, and the sun is just bursting. So all of our solar deities and all of our virility deities and a lot of our gods that sort of identify as male, certainly not all of them, are surging at this time of year. They're really coming forward and they're like, yes, check me out. I've got all this power. Woo, doing my thing. And the form that we traditionally hang out with here is, one, the sun, but two, the green man. And so let's take a couple of looks at the green man. This is a sculpture on the side of the... Hey, what are you doing? Dang it. Technology, man, I am telling you. It is coming to get me today. It really, really is. This is a sculpture of the green man on the wall of a temple in Iraq, carved in the 2nd century. This is at the ruins of Hatra. So, quite a ways back. This is a modern green man, which I really love. It's a really interesting looking face. This is a green man from the Bamberg Cathedral from the 13th century in Germany. And in all of these, the green man is absolutely depicted as this full face of greenery. This is a Roman mosaic in Istanbul from the 6th century. And we can see the green man there. And the most traditional depiction of this character is this face that is covered in foliage and coming out of the foliage. We will even in some sculptures see leaves coming directly out of the eyes, directly out of their nose, directly out of their mouth. They are of this energy. And if you look really closely, one of the things I really like about this is that this is all oak leaves. So it is our Oak King, who is the green man, because the Oak King rules this time of the year. And we even see acorns up in their hair, which is just a really cool detail. And the reason that I have the planet Earth in here in these slides as well is because this is Mama Earth. This is the Mother Earth. This is the form of the goddess that we really are working with at this time of year and, kind of every single day. It is the thing that sustains us. And if there was, in a Beltane season, that really starts to become super, super apparent. So yeah, we know the green man as the green man. This character is connected to Jack in the Green, Robin Hood, Peter Pan, who is ultimately Pan, and even green-faced deities like Osiris, And it is important, while there is a lot of emphasis in paganism on the green man, there certainly are plenty of deities that are showing up like green women or green beings, even, that are just literally sort of the personification of the fecundity of the forest or the fecundity of the natural world. That's really what we're kind of tapping into and who we are kind of tapping into with all of this green man, Jack in the green person type symbolism. That's what's up. Okay. All pertinent deity aspects are coming into their own power at this time, sitting in their seat of authority, grasping their will, and initiating themselves and each other into deeper levels of interpersonal exchange. Okay, pretty cute. Okay, so green man. I'm like, where do I want to go now? Because I kind of screwed myself. So I think what I'm going to talk about next is some of our global themes. Okay. So as we look around the planet, we see holidays and celebrations and festivals that last a day, a week, a month, centered around spring, surging power, fertility, virility, and fecundity, sacred marriages, exchanging energy between opposing systems, and sea and oceanic work. We've kind of already talked about a lot of this stuff in the last couple of weeks, and we'll be talking about it a lot more. So we have holidays at this time of year on the actual night of Beltane. I just uploaded the workbook and the calendar to the Patreon bag of holding. If you have access to that, you can go get the workbook and the calendar. It's all there. I'll put up the slides and the video maybe after class. We'll see. There might not be a recording of this. I might have to redo it. But we are looking at holidays on the night of Beltane, like Nox, which is the night of Pan, the night of Set for Thelemites, May Day, Zaka Day from our Vodun family, which is a festival celebrating agriculture, Lei Day, which from Hawaii, which is a festival of leis, or the garlands of flowers that they give people, the celebration of Asherah from Babylonia, at the Feast of the Queen of Heaven from our Catholic friends. All of these kind of lay on top of each other. And then other holidays that we are seeing at this time of year. Things like Earth Day. We have a whole bunch of different holidays that are like Earth Day. We have Arbor Day. We have Yggdrasil Day from our Norse folk friends. Lots of different holidays at this time of year, modern and ancient, celebrating trees and celebrating life that is of the planet, the power of nature, really. We have Sakadawa for our Buddhist friends, and what that is a big, long festival that is a type of New Year for some Buddhist groups, not all. They have a whole bunch of different New Years at this time of year, through kind of winter through spring. There's a bunch of different New Years, and there's a bunch of different holidays that celebrate the birth of Buddha. This is all connected, as well as Sakadawa specifically is celebrating the not the birth of Buddha, but the conception of Buddha, the moment that the fetus came into existence in Buddha's mother's womb. And then it also celebrates his enlightenment and his death. And it is connected to the full moons for some and the new moons for others. But it is a lunar festival, lunar-based festival that does sit within a month spectrum around this time period. Seaman's Day from Iceland. We also have things like the Veneration of the Thorn, which is another type of green man, earth-oriented festival from the Irish. But we have other stuff going on at this time of year. So I'm going to talk about that for a second, then we'll come back to this. Because with that opposing systems thing, what we're really talking about with our opposing systems is sex and death. Sex/sexuality slash sensuality, and death slash release slash moving on to the next plane of existence. And we really see that deeply illustrated in the Vodun ceremony and multi-day festival of the Caisse Canary and Mange les Morts. And I apologize if I mispronounced that. This is the release of the dead from purgatory and the feeding of the dead. These 2 nights kick off a multi-week festival held in honor of appeasing the dead, and culminating with the Feast of Simbi Blanc, who is a white serpent deity. And this is really cognate to other philosophical and religious ideas that some cultures practice, which is that the dead, after they die, kind of hang out in purgatory. They hang out at the bus station for a while. And then there are certain times of year, or even sometimes this is something that happens every couple of years, where there's a big festival, there's a big celebration, there's a big ceremony where the dead are officially sent off to the lands of the dead. And as a side note, what's really interesting about a practice like that is that it absolutely gives the living time to let go of the person that has died. It gives them time to process the fact that they are not physically here anymore, that they are moving on to somewhere else, that they are going to be in a different form going forward. So, just an interesting thing. But again, connecting our Beltane Samhain imagery here, right? Working in this, incredibly vibrant part of the year, but thinking about the dead and releasing the dead and working with the dead. We also have Easter celebrations at this time of year. For plain old Catholics, they've already had Easter. Orthodox Catholics are still within the Easter festivals. And again, that's another life and death festival, right? Life, death, rebirth moment there. So working with our polarities, our rites of passage, all of that stuff. You know what Easter is. I'm not going to tell you about it. And then coming back to our more traditional Beltane festivals, we have Floralia from our Roman ancestors, Lay Day that I mentioned already from Hawaii, Garland Day in the UK, and plenty of others that are completely centered around the celebration of flowers, the spirit of flowers, depicting deities as living flowers, all of that kind of stuff. Sweet and playful festivals dedicated to flowers and flowering plants and trees from the past and the present. Folks head out to nature, spruce up gardens, plant flowers, pick flowers, and exchange flowers. And that idea of exchanging flowers is something we'll talk about a little bit later. That is a very traditional May Day celebration type of thing. Oh no, I wonder when you lost me. Am I still here or have I gone? Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Let me know. I just glanced at chat. Tell me if I'm here or tell me if I'm gone, if you guys can still hear me or not. Oh, lordy lord. This class, look, Beltane, you're going to get taught. I don't care what you have to say. We're teaching this class. I want to wait until somebody lets me know that we're good to go. Awesome. Yay. Okay, good. Yeah, my screen still frozen on YouTube, so I'm trusting you guys that this is working. Okay, so what I was saying was that we have a bunch of flower-oriented holidays at this time of year. Floralia from the Romans, Lay Day from the Hawaiians, Garland Day from UK, and lots of others. And these are all very sweet and playful festivals dedicated to flowers, flowering plants and trees from the past and the present. Folks head out to nature, spruce up gardens, plant flowers, pick flowers, and exchange flowers. And I was saying that we are going to talk a little bit more about the practice of exchanging flowers. But side note, let me say something about picking flowers. Be kind and be respectful. Picking wild flowers that are growing in an empty lot somewhere and are obviously just randomly growing, and you can really be certain about that. Help yourself. Go for it. Enjoy. If they are growing near a roadside, if they're growing through near heavy traffic, they might not be things that you necessarily want to eat or use medicinally or use internally, because they may have picked up a lot of toxins. So first and foremost, if you're gathering wildflowers or wild herbs at this time, and yes, Beltane and Letha season are both fantastic for harvesting herbs for later in the year, be aware of what is it growing in, what is it growing near, and do I want to put that in my body, or do I want to work with this plant outside of my body in some way, as an incense, something to look at, I pressed it in a book, etc. 2, be respectful of the people around the flowers. They might be growing them on purpose, and you don't want to steal somebody's hard work. They probably have plans for those flowers too. And 3, if you are out in nature and you are moved to collect plant or collect herb or collect flower, all I can encourage you to do is to do it with the utmost level of respect. Educate yourself as much as possible, especially with the incredible amount of climate change and how quickly climate change seems to be settling upon us in these current years. You might think that picking this one thing is not a big deal because you just took a little bit and you're not really disturbing too much, but it may be a plant that is on its way to becoming extinct because its growing environment is becoming more and more incorrect for it, or what have you. I don't mean to scare you with this idea, but it's really important when we go out and we're picking flowers or we're collecting plants or we're collecting herbs to be extremely conscious and conscientious of what is the state of this plant in general. Are people excited that folks are harvesting this because it's an invasive species and you're helping thin it out? Cool, right on. Now we get to do our medicine and we're helping out the group. Or am I harvesting something that is having a harder and harder and harder time growing and establishing itself year after year? Well, now I'm adding to that problem. So I don't want to do that, right? So conscientious, be thinking, do some education, make a list of stuff that you're looking for, make sure you can identify it correctly. Talk to an herbalist, talk to a local wildcrafter, ask them about their ethical routine and what it is that they do to make sure that it's okay that they collect those plants. All right, moving on to the Sky Guide. Okay, so I'm not even sure if you can read that because it's so small. We have so much happening in the sky during Beltane this season is out of control. Okay, so to kick things off, we have the Eta Aquariids meteor showers and we have the Lyrids meteor showers, which are more or less coming to an end in the next few days, which is why I didn't list them on here. But they both are happening right now, and sky watchers love these two meteor showers because we basically go about 4 months without a single meteor shower in the Northern Hemisphere during winter. And so sky watchers are like, I need my shooting stars, please, please, you know. So we finally have some. You can look these up on lots and lots of free websites, and they'll tell you what the peak nights are that are going to be like the best for seeing the most shooting stars in a single night. Other things that we have going on during this, let's just skip down to the really beefy stuff. On April 26th, we have a super full moon at 7 degrees of Scorpio. I'm sure that's going to be fine with everything that's going on. When a moon is super full, what that means, generally speaking, is that the moon is coming closer to the Earth than it usually does, and it will look a little bit bigger. Now, people will exaggerate this and be like, it looked like the size of a frickin', you know. Okay, sure. I want what you're taking, though. Please, please. Don't do drugs, kids, but if you do the good ones. But the best way to see a super full moon is when it is just coming up over the horizon, because it looks really, really big in comparison to the landscape and the buildings and things like that. Once it gets way up higher in the sky, it hasn't changed shape. Our eye just decides that it looks smaller. But it will look frickin' huge. It's pretty dramatic. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means, it being in Scorpio here in just a second. Okay. And then we have on May 5th, solar Beltane. Now, I make a big deal about the cross-quarter solar dates because the cross-quarter holidays, which are Imbolc, Beltane, Lughnasadh or Lammas, and Samhain, are not marked by a specific point in the sun's work or the moon's work. They're just sort of in between the solstices and the equinoxes. The solstice and the equini are really easy to identify. We see that the sun is doing something very specific. It didn't do it yesterday. It's not going to do it tomorrow. It's very obviously happening on this day. But these cross-quarter holidays are sort of these big, epic, amorphous, like, I don't know, around here, like during this time is fine kind of a thing. However, there is an actual place where we can mark it, and that is, for Beltane, May 5th. Exactly, you are here. The sun is like, you are here. So where solar Beltane falls, at least within tropical astrology, is at 15 degrees of Taurus. The sun will be exactly in between the dates for the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So 15 degrees of Taurus is exactly in between those two things, and that's May 5th. And what's really interesting is there's a ton of old holidays connected to May 4th, May 5th, and May 6th that all are centered around a lot of our Beltane symbolism, springtime, virility, fertility type stuff. Okay, also happening in this season, we have a micro new moon at 11 degrees of Taurus, May 11th. That is the lunar apogee, and what that means is that the moon is about as far as it's going to get from Earth as it's going to get in its orbit. And so the new moon already, in my mind, looks kind of small. It will look even smaller. But again, by a couple of degrees. We're not talking about like, it was the smallest moon I've ever seen. It's not that small. It's just smaller. Calm down. May 15th, the sun enters Taurus in sidereal astrology. I guess I should mention the sun enters Taurus April 19th. That was a couple days ago in tropical astrology. The sun enters Gemini May 20th in tropical astrology. May 11th is our next new moon in Gemini. And then we have on May 26th another super full moon in Sagittarius. This is a total lunar eclipse. This is a super full blood moon at 5 degrees of Sagittarius. Total lunar eclipse on this day. Excitingly, Mercury goes retrograde at 24 degrees of Gemini on May 19th. So send your emails before then, because if this is any indication of what it's going to be like, it's going to be a rough one. And then we have on June 10th our new moon at 19 degrees of Gemini. This is our annular, not annual, but annular solar eclipse, meaning it won't be a complete solar eclipse. We will still be able to see a bit of the sun the whole time. And then on June 11th, we have the heliacal rising of Algol. And then on June 15th, the sun enters Gemini in sidereal astrology. And we have the heliacal rising of the Pleiades, which is, of course, connected to the sign of Taurus. So let's look very quickly. There's all of that stuff going on up in the sky. Lots of it. Was there anything else I wanted to say about that? No, we're good. Let me come to this. So here is Taurus as the constellation in the sky. The entirety of Taurus as it is currently conceptualized as a constellation is all within that white space. And right dead center is the giganto star Aldebaran. And then just above that, if you can see that little yellow smear, that's the Pleiades. So what's important to remember about constellations is there's kind of not a lot of consensus on exactly what stars belong in a constellation and which ones don't, and exactly how we draw the lines between one constellation and the next. So this is the modern shape of Taurus, but the constellation of Taurus has had other shapes. And here are a couple. We see the one on the left and the one on the right. Those are both ways of conceptualizing Taurus. Now, what I think is really interesting about both of these is, A, they definitely look like bull's horns. But they also, to me, look like old-fashioned plows, which would have been attached to the back of the bull or the cow. So in the constellation of Taurus, for me, I can see both the bull with its horns as well as some of the machinery that has been connected to Taurus and the bull for a very, very long time. Kind of interesting. Here is another way of depicting the constellation of Taurus, where it almost looks more like a K. We'll come back to these images, but just note those. Okay. We are skipping through. We are going to go really, really fast through stuff because, holy moly, I feel like I shouldn't push my luck and just go with what we scheduled. One last thing to say about the astrology of this time of year. Our moons that we experience in Sagittarius and Gemini at this time of year are always the last moons of spring. So when we have our Sagittarius full moon and we have our Gemini new moon, those are lunar indicators that spring is coming to an end. Okay, moving on. Two, our actual astrology. We talked about astronomy, now let's talk about astrology. Okay, so I normally would be reading a lot to you guys, but I'm not going to because I have so much more to present. So buy the book, join my Patreon, and get the actual workbook, get access to the workbook for all of the information about the stuff. But the important thing is, as I said before, when we move through Beltane season, we move through Taurus and we move through Gemini. And so as we move through Taurus, a lot of our attention and emphasis and energy gets put towards the physical plane, really kind of for the first time in a long time. The last time we were in an earth sign was Capricorn. That's a Yule season. So it's been a minute since we have, in an energetic or a magical way, sort of been brought back to the body and brought back to the earth. And Taurus season is like, come here, take a poop, eat this, wash yourself, move that couch. Like it wants attendance to the physical plane and the stuff that's happening here in the physical world. It's delicious, right? It's pretty good. And so as we move through Taurus season, these are the moons that we're dealing with. We have our new moon in Taurus and we have our full moon in Scorpio. And when we're doing this work, the new moon in Taurus, and I have them in the order that you're going to experience them in. So we are going to have our full moon in Scorpio first, and then we have the new moon in Taurus later on, which is the way it works this year. The moon names, the priestess's moon and the dryad's moon, come from, as we always mention, Raven Caldera's Moon Phase Astrology. It's a great book. It's in the bibliography for the workbook. And so the type of work that we are doing for these two moons is really this deep consideration around what is it to be in congress with the physical plane, and what happens when we come into congress with the physical plane. With the Dryad's moon, we are thinking about what is it to be an Earth Mother? What is Mother Earth? What is the Green Man? What do those concepts mean for you? So we're approaching it from a conceptual place, but a little bit experiential. Then we come to the full moon in Scorpio, and we are really getting into the meaty part of the meat, right? We're talking to ourselves about what is the life, death, rebirth process. How are sex and death related? How are they the same? Scorpio wants to get into the gristle and the fat and the blood and the meat and the sweat and the musk of it all. And the new moon in Taurus is kind of like gently tiptoeing into the grassy meadow and being like, the physical plane, I remember this is lovely. And then 2 weeks later we go to the full moon in Scorpio and it's like, hedonism, hello. The mead has taken effect. Okay, then we move into Gemini season. And so Now, as we move into Gemini season, and this is going to be the last 4 weeks of Beltane season, we start to stimulate the mind. The last time that we were in an air sign was Aquarius. That was the end of Yule and the beginning of Imbolc season. Very conceptual, right? Very spacey, very abstract. So yeah, we're bringing a little bit of that energy in, but Gemini wants to do all of that stuff right now, here, like in the here and now. And so we want to think all the thoughts. We want to have all the conversations. We want to send all the texts and say yes to everything, which is definitely a Gemini energy element. And so our Gemini moon work, we're going to have the full moon in Sagittarius first, and then we're going to have the new moon in Gemini way out at the end of Beltane season, just before summer solstice, Letha, is when we get that new moon in Gemini. So when we move through our full moon in Sagittarius, I'm encouraging you to journal on a few sources of wisdom that you trust and lean on, that you inherited. And you can take that word inherited however you like, whether those were belief systems that you inherited from your family, belief systems you inherited from your country or your community or your society that you live in, or belief systems that you inherited from your chosen family and your chosen community, your tribe, perhaps, that you connect with, that thing. What are some pieces of wisdom or some schools of thought that somebody handed you and said, you can trust this, and you do trust it? When we move through Sagittarius, we are really examining what we believe in. And sort of the conversation that's happening between Sagittarius and Gemini is a conversation about the similarities and the differences between belief and knowledge. And so when we work through the new moon in Gemini, yes, we want to, as I have suggested here, list 3 ways that you want to be further connected to your neighbors and your neighborhood, and what are you going to do about it? Because that's definitely one of the very best ways that we can work with Gemini energy, but also sort of having a conversation with yourself around the similarities and the differences between what do you believe and what do you know? What would you qualify as a fact, and what would you qualify as a belief? And why do you invest as much as you do in either one or the other? Sussing out a lot of that kind of stuff makes a lot of the work later on in the year a lot easier. And again, this is not meant to be coming from a judgmental place. I am not saying that beliefs or knowledge are more important than the other. In many contexts, there are certain contexts where knowledge and fact and information is almost always going to be more important than belief, and the vice versa is true as well. There are situations where the belief is always going to be more paramount than whatever might be written in an encyclopedia. So how do you sit with those two worlds, and what's your relationship between belief and knowledge? And do you trust your beliefs more? Do you trust fact and information more? All of that kind of stuff. Okay. Moving on to tarot. Yeah, let's do it. I'm like, what did I do? What did I pick? Okay. So the 2 big tarot cards that I encourage you to work with during Beltane season are the Hierophant and the Empress. The Hierophant connects to Taurus, and the Empress connects to Venus. The Hierophant is a tough card to work with, just straightforward. The Hierophant is definitely one of the cards in the major arcana in tarot that has a lot of baggage put on it. And it's because Hierophants for the last 4,000 to 5,000 years have kind of screwed us. Hierophants have often been stereotypically the character in society that uses religious beliefs to manipulate the masses into getting things done that the elites want. That's just sort of the TLDR of the last 5,000 years. No big deal. And we can trace it all the way back to, at least the Sumerian creation myth, when it was rewritten by the Babylonians, all of a sudden Marduk's the winner and he's super cool and he's got like 11,000 totally real followers on TikTok. And, you know, you're just like, bro, no, where did this Marduk asshole come from? I'm telling you, me and Marduk meet on the street. Let's go, dog. Let's frickin' go. Because I don't believe the hype. That's all propaganda. I don't believe in it. So the Hierophant has become something that is used like a tool by the ruling elite to literally herd the masses as if the masses were cattle. We can think of the Hierophant as literally like the goad that is put, or the reins that are put on the animal to control them and direct them into one course of action or the other. The animal being us, the populace, the normal people of the world. So underneath all of that stuff, though, the Hierophant is an element in all of us that really needs to be trained and controlled, but can be incredibly useful. And from a gnarly perspective, the Hierophant is that thing in us that wants to use dogma and use belief to control an outcome of a situation. The Hierophant in us wants to bark orders at everybody, but doesn't necessarily want to be the one that like does the physical labor. But the Hierophant, when we are working with this entity from a healthy perspective, is that thing in us that says, okay, Aries, you had this really cool idea. Now I'm going to come in and draw a blueprint. We're not going to just stick with the, I had a great idea, and then sit on the couch talking about our great idea for the rest of our lives. The Hierophant is the energy that comes in right after that and says, let's make a list. Let's make a blueprint. Let's literally sit down and think about all the parts that would have to go into making this really cool idea manifest, physically exist. That is really what the Hierophant is here to help us do. And that's a cool energy. We need that energy if we're going to get anything done in our life. We can't just sit around and talk about all of our great ideas. We have to, at some point, actually kind of rein ourselves in, right? And direct ourselves toward physical world action and manifestation. On the other side of all of this, though, we have the Empress. And the Empress is that energy that's in us that is nurturing and is excited to see us grow and see us develop, and is supporting all of this work that we're talking about and making the blueprint and manifesting the thing, but from a very loving, accepting place. And the metaphor that I think of that's kind of like the argument or the discussion that's between these two characters is, you have a garden and you're growing some tomatoes. The Hierophant, when he's being an asshole, is going to go out and yell at the tomatoes every single day. You're too red. That's not red enough. Why would you grow to 3 feet when you could grow to 3.5? And on and on and on. You need more water? Are you kidding me? They want to control and dictate every little element of it, and they want to get out there and tell the tomatoes how to grow. That's not their business. The tomatoes know what they're doing. Get out of the way. The Empress comes in and says, stop yelling at the frickin' tomatoes. What is wrong with you? Go sit in the shade and have a snack. Your blood sugar is obviously low. Please calm down. And the Empress observes the tomatoes and says, wow, their leaves are pretty wilty. They probably need some more water. Here's some water. Now now the Hierophant would be like, okay, so you watered exactly 2.5 gallons at 10:12 this morning. I'm going to be back at 10:12 tomorrow with 2.5 gallons. And the Empress is like, no, that's not how it works. I'm responding to the tomatoes. The tomatoes will tell me what they need. And this is a really cool relationship that we can work to develop in our own life. Yes, we need to develop a voice in us that says, okay, it's time to get to business. Let's make a list. What do we need? What are the parts? Let's manifest. But we also need an energy in us that says, let's also witness the process and not dictate every single element of it, but instead respond to the process. Maybe some stuff's going to come up that I can't plan for. That's not a reason to freak out. That's just a reason to adapt. Now, if there's anything that's a little funky or difficult to work with the Empress, is that this archetype is extremely laid back. So where the Hierophant is like, we've got deadlines, the Empress is like, we totally do not have any deadlines at all. And so we can fall into that, swinging back and forth between these two extremes, or we might say these two polarities, between being a little too dictatorial, a little too dedicated to the blueprint and the plan and the I've got to accomplish portion of it, or we might get a little too dedicated to the it's fine, it'll figure itself out, just let it grow however it wants. But as folks who garden or grow houseplants know, you do have to get in and trim the plants back sometimes. You do have to repot them because their roots become bound. We can't just let everything just be however it is. We do need to attend to it and answer its problems and occasionally, cut stuff back or change up the feeding routine or whatever. And that's where the Hierophant comes in and says, I'm growing this plant. This is happening. I'm not going to just let fate take over and whatever happens, happens. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this manifest. But the Empress is like, relax. It's okay if you look cute while you do it and eat a nice stew. That's fine. And we don't have to, by blood, stick to the deadline. It's going to be okay if it's a day late or a day earlier, a little bit different from how we originally envisioned it. That's all okay. That's the thing actually becoming the thing. Okay. While we are here, let me also show you this. Whoop! Not that one! Too late. There we go. Okay. Here's the big spread of tarot helpers. We have the Hierophant as Taurus, we have Empress as Venus, and then we have our 3 minor arcana that we can also work with, which is the 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles. I know everybody's really excited to see the 5 of Pentacles. It is clearly one of the most cheerful cards in the deck, with 2 people in bandages on crutches stumbling through the snow. And I always think of this card as a spring snowstorm, and wouldn't you know, the whole middle of the country was covered in a foot of snow just the other day. I think they might still be covered in snow today. I have a big ol' piece on Patreon about the Hierophant and the Empress and their relationship. That is also on my website. And I also have a gigantic piece on Patreon about the 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles. If you would like to read any of that, you will get way more information than what I'm about to fire hose at your ear in the next 3 minutes. But also, I am slowly publishing the 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles pieces on my website. So those will all be public soon. In fact, the 5 of Pentacles, I think, is already up. I think I just put that up the other day. What we are seeing here is struggle and adaptation on the physical plane. In the 5 of Pentacles, we are seeing people who are trudging through pretty gnarly conditions, and they clearly are not in a great shape themselves. And we have that glowing window that behind them, and my question around the 5 of Pentacles is always like, why don't we go in there? Well, think of all the stuff that we just said about the Hierophant. I can think of all kinds of reasons why people might not want to align with that energy. How many people have been pushed away from patriarchy? How many people have been pushed away from the church? How many people have had a deadbeat dad, or just society in general, America in general, sort of failing them and ostracizing them because of their gender, because of the color of their skin, because of their lifestyle, their chosen lover or partner or family. There's so many reasons why we might choose to stay in the hardship and not go inside, where the promise of ease is also coupled with the promise of conformity. Because that's a lot of what is happening with the Hierophant in its current state, in the way that this archetype is used and manipulated here in the world. The Hierophant is like, come inside, it's going to be great. And then here's all these rules and regulations, and no, you can't have your dog, and no, you can't look like this, and no, you can't, all of that. Then we move into the 6 of Pentacles, and this is also another relatively uncomfortable card. We see these 2 people, or 2 people like them, are now in a slightly better condition. There's no snow on the ground. That's nice. We see some green plants off in the distance, so clearly the weather has gotten a little bit better, but they're still not doing super great. They're not on crutches. They don't have bandages. That's good. But they're still on the ground. Their clothes are patched up. They're still, struggling to an extent. And the 6 of Pentacles depicts a scene that also has a ton of baggage and has a ton of weird stuff attached to it. Are we looking at a person who's dressed really nicely, who's literally weighing their coins before they hand them out to somebody who needs that help? That feels funky, right? And at the same time, we know that when we are walking down the street and we see a person on the corner that is asking for money, of course we want to help them, but I cannot hand them my entire bank account, because then we're basically just trading places, right? Now I'm out on the street. I can't pay my rent. I can't buy groceries. I can't pay my bills. So the scale in this card is something about how do we manifest on the physical plane, but we also save a little bit for tomorrow. How do we answer to the different portions of ourself that maybe haven't quite been fully wrangled into the plan yet, and we appease them to an extent, but we still stay focused on the prize. And then we move into the Seven of Pentacles. And the Seven of Pentacles really talks to us about being in a state where we have leveled up enough to the point where we can begin to generate our own fecundity. Five of Pentacles, we're really pretty desperate. We are totally unprepared for the situation. Six of Pentacles, we're getting some help, and that's cool. We've got support. But in the Seven of Pentacles, we've now moved into a place where we are generating our own power. We're generating our own thing, whatever that is. And in this moment, we are taking a second after we have clearly worked hard enough to get the growth to this point, and we are daydreaming a little bit about what might come in the 8, 9, and 10 of the cards. We are taking a second. We're having a smoke break, or a cinnamon stick break, as you will, and we are daydreaming just a little bit. We're fantasizing a little bit about what could we accomplish with what we already have, and if it gets even bigger, what could we accomplish with that? That's a lot of the work that we are doing with the 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles. Yes, this is hard. Yes, I'm not good at it yet. But yes, I will be eventually. And at some point, when I really begin to pick up steam and I really begin to generate my own power, then the universe really starts to open itself up to me. And I can begin to imagine what else could I do with all of this. All right. And so then our other tarot cards that we can work with at this time of year for the last 4 weeks of Beltane season are the Lovers and the Magician. The Lovers card connects us to Gemini, and the Magician card connects us to the planet Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini. And this is a perfect depiction of all of those great sacred marriages that we're talking about at this time of year, of all of these gods and goddesses that are getting together and knocking sacred boots. As we talked about before at the beginning of class, the sun is reaching its apex of its cycle. Between Beltane and Lughnasadh, basically, we go from Beltane to Letha to Lughnasadh. This is the high arc of the sun's surge of power over the course of the year. And this is why all of these sacred marriages are taking place at this time of the year, because the goddess is literally scooping up the energy from the sun when it is at its highest point. Or those solar deities that are out there, the goddess is saying, now let's make stuff, because you are at your most potent, your most full, your most turgid, throbbing, veiny self. So we have the Lovers and we have the Magician. And for me, these two cards actually depict exactly the same thing from two very specific points of view. In the Lovers card, this is sort of the experience of being here on Earth and seeing the great forces of the world, weather, economy, whatever, earthquakes, things like that, the natural world itself coming back to life, and sort of being in awe of all of that, and ultimately being brought into union with people who we might have otherwise never mixed energy with to get something done. Make a baby, create a thing in the world, have a dope conversation, whatever it is. All of those things are types of energy exchange. So in the Lovers card, we're seeing that from kind of our point of view, in a sense, or the point of view of the things that are being combined, and sort of looking up and being like, wow, these forces are huge and mysterious. And then in the Magician card, we're seeing it from the opposite point of view, where we are the thing that's doing the combining. and we are looking down in this card. We're directing energy from above down to our work table where we have these elements that we are combining in different ways to make stuff happen. So for me, these two cards literally depict the same moment, but from one view and then from the other view of the thing that is combining and the thing that's doing the combining. Pretty cool stuff. These cards that we are working with here, these guys and these guys, are from the Builders of the Aditum deck. The cards come in black and white, and you paint them. They are an absolutely fantastic tool for learning tarot. Really, really, really cool. And then the cards that we used on the wide screen with the 5, 6, 7 of Pentacles, that's from the Smith-Waite deck. Moving on to... Oh yeah, do we want to go to this yet? Yes, okay. So, oh wait, no, we're not going to go to this yet. First, we're going to go to bullshit. Okay, some notes about the Bull of Heaven. So this I will read to you guys. This is some information that I have accumulated over the years around Taurus and the bull and oxen, imagery and symbolism and things that we find throughout time and throughout history. So here, what you are looking at is a fire pit in a home in the archaeological site Catalhayuk, and you've probably heard me talk about this site before. Pretty incredible spot. And this is full-blown sets of auroch horns set into the fire pit. Aurochs and bulls, cattle, cows were incredibly important to this group of people. This is approximately 9,000 years ago. The constellation of Taurus is huge and may have reached all the way back to Pisces at one point in history. We know humans have been working with this constellation for over 6,000 years, as it marked the vernal equinox from approximately 4,300 BC to 2000 BCE. But it's not the oldest record of humans venerating this creature. The earliest evidence we have of bull worship so far is at the famous archaeological site Catalhayuk in eastern Anatolia in Turkey from approximately 9,000 years ago. Great sets of horns are embedded in fire pits, and massive red bulls are painted on the walls. I tried to find a really good photo of that, but I couldn't. I did find a really dope photo of a bunch of red hands across white walls. It's wild how vivid the paintings are still, and literally 9,000 years old, 9,500 years old. It's like, what? It's definitely one of those things where you're like, that's not... How did they... Magic! Da-da-da-da-da-da-da! Get some on you, magic! Okay, moving on. 2. This is Gilgamesh killing, supposedly, the bull of heaven? I don't know. There's a lot of, it's a lot of contact. Seems kind of friendly. Often called the Bull of Heaven, sacred bull deities are depicted as both solar and lunar in various cultures. The word Ka in Egyptian means both life force and bull. Apis, who you see here, was an Egyptian bull god, the son of Hathor, also a bull goddess. And Apis was sacrificed and reborn yearly and became a go-between for humans and other deities. In this picture, we see Hathor, who is also known as Hesat, who is pretty much kind of the mother goddess outside of Isis, always depicted with the sun between her horns, often depicted as a cow-headed goddess or a goddess with cow's ears. Here in this picture, she is suckling the pharaoh Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut is possibly the most powerful woman in recorded history and possibly the most powerful human in recorded history. She ruled over a civilization that dwarfed Alexander's Greece. and just an incredible number of people. She ruled over Egypt at a time when it was just absolutely massive. And in recorded history, we really don't know of another person who ruled over as many people or ruled over such a prosperous and rich kingdom as the Egypt that Hatshepsut governed. Here is another shot of Hathor. This is a very normal way for her to be depicted, not as a cow, but as an actual human, but with cow's ears. Notice her little cow ears there. I just think they're super cute. Crete had their renowned bull dances with players grasping the bull's horns and leaping over them, and Minoa had their infamous minotaur skulking in his labyrinth. Zeus, of course, showed up as a white bull to win the Princess Europa, who rode on his back, and eventually was taken to Crete, and the two of them become the parents of Minos, of course, the king of Minoa. Shiva, from the Hindu pantheon, had Nandi, the sacred bull, as his chariot or wagon and protector. The name Nandi comes from the Tandil word nandu, which means to flourish, to appear, or to grow. In Sanskrit, Nandi means joy, happiness, and fulfillment. Okay, now here is something interesting that I wanted to show you guys. In Hebrew, ox is represented by the first letter in the alphabet, Aleph. It is one of the 4 creatures depicted as the archangels representing Earth. Now, in my research around this, I have discovered that the word ox, the word auroch, and the word hawk are all linguistically connected. And I just think that that is a really interesting aside. But I want you to look at these shapes, and now I want you to look at these shapes. Anything look vaguely familiar here? To me, these letters that represent the letter A look very similar to the way that these constellations have been depicted. In particular, looking at this depiction of Taurus and then looking at the Hebrew letter Aleph or A. I just thought that that was really freaking wild. But also looking at these 2 depictions of Taurus and looking at the Ge'ez and the Phoenician. Ge'ez is basically Ethiopian, or it's related to Ethiopian, and the Phoenician as well. Even the Syriac, it changed slightly because I think I used a different font and it changed the shape of it. But it also has this sort of 2-pronged thing at the bottom. And all of these shapes ultimately relate back to the Egyptian hieroglyph for ox, which is literally a cow's head with horns. So that's what we are seeing in all of these shapes, really. Bulls are often also associated with the ideas of connections, unifiers, bridges, or something upon which other things rely for support. White buffalo are revered as sacred omens of great change by many North American tribes, as well as the Catholics, but is specifically the Lakota and Plains Indians that work with white buffalo. And of course, this also connects to the goddess or the deity or the archetype white buffalo calf woman, who, incidentally, came during a famine and taught the Lakota 7 sacred rites to raise up the Lakota and help break the famine. Interesting that that deity is specifically connected to food. Moses of the Old Testament, who was often depicted with ram's horns, which connects to Aries, the astrological sign immediately preceding Taurus, specifically forbade the worship of golden calves, which the locals seemed fond of. So that was literally like, I'm the new sheriff, take that picture down. We're not talking about that person anymore. So petty. Oh. There was a Syrian deity named Baal, who we talked about a lot in the Ostara class, who was a bull god who ruled over the sky, lightning, and fertility. Side note, Hathor, also a sky goddess. Baal or Bel was also a title that meant owner or lord or master, and that certainly connects back to our Hierophant imagery and baggage that we were talking about. But many gods of this time and region had the prefix Baal or Bel, like Baal Shamin, a sky deity, Baal Haman, a weather god who oversaw vegetation and was connected to the Egyptian Amun, or Baal Karnain, the two-horned god. He had a temple that stood at Palmyra in Syria until the terrorist group in ISIL blew it up, literally, in 2015. So this is a picture of the temple. There were carvings inside. It was really incredible. A lot of this archaeological site is relatively unscathed, but this temple has been more or less destroyed. And there is an effort globally, actually, to rebuild this temple to the extent that it can be rebuilt. But, you know, man. Moloch, the Canaanite deity, was another infamous bull god. His name relates to a few interesting words like the Hebrew Melech, which means sacrifice in Punic, and the Akkadian Malku, which also means, which both of those words in Hebrew and Malku mean king. It's also connected to names like Malcolm and Melkart, and if you're not familiar with Kabbalistic work, this also is the word Malkuth, which is the 10th Sephiroth, the place of manifestation, the physical plane. Kayutha is the cosmic bull in medieval Islamic cosmology. It is said to carry on its back the angel who shoulders the earth and the rock platform upon which the angel stands. The bull is said to stand on the giant fish or whale, Bahamut, and that is Tiamat or Typhon, who we talked about in the last class a lot as well. Look at all those horns. That's a horny bull. Back to Katul Hayuk. One significant creature that is nearly universal in all of these creatures is that they are depicted as stark white or shining, and many myths surround a white bull or a white buffalo or a white cow. So just scrolling back through that, like how many of these are actually depicted as white or shining or brilliant in some way. We don't know, I don't think that we know if this these pieces of Hathor were painted, and if so, what they were painted as. I could be wrong about that. But I'm very rarely wrong, so that's probably not true. And then, of course, we have the image of the sacred cow, right? Or that metaphor of the sacred cow. And that's specifically something that can't be questioned because of public outcry, social etiquette, or tradition. And I think that it's very, like, when I read the definition, I was like, or tradition, that's not social outcry. That's something that's dictated usually from above, by authority, by government, by priest, by somebody else. So, an interesting thing. And then, you know, just glancing at my notes, we also have the Adumbria, which is the Norse cow, and a few others. So, lots of cow deities, cow goddesses and gods to the front, please. All right. So, briefly, I just wanted to talk, we are pretty close to the end. I know we kind of raced through this because it's just been sort of bonkers, but I really appreciate you guys staying with me. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about some stuff that we actually don't normally talk about in the classes anymore, and I wanted to bring this back. So we are going to talk about some of our animal helpers, and is this really what I wanted to? No, I don't think it is. We're going to talk about some of the ritual work that we do at this time of year and some of the symbols that we work with at this time of year. So, forms of observance. We're going to come back to all of this stuff. There we go. Ritual forms. Running between two bonfires or jumping a fire. This is absolutely super, super traditional to Beltane. Side note, don't frickin' sue me if you are a clumsy goof and you fall face first into the bonfire. Not my problem. I didn't, no. It's not, I didn't say to do it. Don't do it. If you're clumsy, don't do it. Okay. I told you just then. You can't sue me. All right. However, do it. So running between two bonfires or jumping a fire. Jumping over Beltane fire is a form of purification and protection. Driving your cattle between two bonfires or walking your family between two bonfires also was a form of protection and purification. From a distance, the two fires were called the Eyes of Anu in the Gaelic lands. Anu being the Welsh goddess of everything, really. Hanging a rowan branch over your door for good luck. Burning a wicker man. We really can't talk about Beltane without talking about the wicker man. So this is the traditional wicker man idea is a giant figure that is built out of wood and stuffed with living beings, humans or animals, and lit afire. As fun as that sounds. Did people really do this? Yeah. It seems like they did. Is it good? I'm not going to tell you how to live, but I'm not doing it. This is connecting to scapegoat rituals, which we've talked about a lot in past classes. This was a way of purifying and protecting an area, as well as propitiation to gods and goddesses. This was intended to be a clearing out of energy and a sacrifice to the sun, to the earth goddess, what have you. But the wicker man doesn't have to have people or living things stuffed in it, thankfully. It can literally be just a big, giant bundle of twigs and sticks, generally formed into a humanoid shape. The idea is to build this creature and then stuff it with things that you want to get rid of, that you want to use to release energy and let it go. We are walking into the bright, solar, active, physical manifestation portion of the wheel. And so a really cool way to work with Wicker Man practices is to just build a tiny one and write down stuff that you want to let go and roll up those pieces of paper, stuff them into your Wicker Man, and throw the whole thing into a bonfire. Throw it into your fireplace, whatever. If you don't have access to a bonfire, you don't have access to a fireplace, you could literally take a single piece of paper and cut out a humanoid form and write stuff on it and tie it up with a few blades of grass and burn that. That would be completely appropriate and fine. It's really sort of this movement or experience where we are bringing together the polarities of fire and earth and bringing together this energy to release this energy. And if all of this sounds really familiar, well, this is Buster Farm. This shot is from Buster Farm, which is a really cool place in the UK that is reimagining what Stone Age and Iron Age civilization might have looked like. They have a lot of really cool reproductions of archaeological finds from different civilizations around Europe. It's pretty dope. But I was going to say, if all of this sounds very familiar, it is because every year America does this at the end of summer, and it's called Burning Man. And it's literally the same thing. It's literally a gigantic bacchanal where people get together, freak out, express, cry, fuck, dream, all of that, live in their bodies, be in the world, create, meet people they've never met before and would otherwise never cross paths with. For whatever reason, we don't do this at Beltane. We do it at the end of summer, at the end of Lunisad season, really. But the ceremony and the celebration of Burning Man is extremely similar to Beltane. Very, very similar. Another thing, other stuff that we do at this time of year is wandering through nature. I haven't said that in a class for a really long time, and I don't know why, but that is my number one ritual form because it is completely free, and all you have to do is put your shoes on and go outside. However you can ambulate yourself outside of your home, to whatever extent, go wherever you want to go, walk through your neighborhood, go to a park, whatever. Just smell the air, see the world changing from spring into summer. It's happening all around you right now. Our sunsets look different, our moonrises look different, our sunrises look different, and everything smells a particular way. And maybe you'll notice that that plant on the corner that always looks dead is actually blooming and actually had life to it. You never know. One of the very best ways that we can observe the season and all of the energy and power that's within a season is just go for a walk. Go be in the world. Another favorite thing of mine is washing in or scrying in May morning dew, and that's literally going out on the morning of May Day at sunrise and catching the dew off the grass on your hands and washing your face with it. Again, depending on where you live, that may be a great or an interesting adventure, so buyer beware, proceed with caution, etc., etc. Go a-maying. So, maying is literally just being rambunctious and silly. Dress up in crazy clothes, play pranks on people, play games with folks. Like I said, dress in bright colors, and in particular, the practice of weaving tiny baskets and filling them with wildflowers and then just secretly leaving them for people and not saying anything. The fairies did it. La 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 la. And of course, sex and sensuality, especially near your plants or your garden. Whatever that means for you. I think our asexual and aromantic friends and folks and community members can sometimes feel left out or on the outside of these Beltane festivities because it's so sex-oriented. But again, coming back to what we talked about at the very beginning of class, there is also absolutely the option of just exchanging energy with things that feel like they are across the circle from you, whatever that means for you. That thing itself is a lot of where we get friction from, and that's dynamic. That's where energy and sparks happen and stuff occurs. And so we want that kind of energy and activity in whatever form you decide to participate in near our plants, near our gardens. We want to wake them up and give them some of that friction and spark and energy from us and get some of it from them too. Of course, symbols for Beltane, maypoles, right? Big deal, the maypole. This is a painting from the 1600s of a May Day festival. And you can see the big tall pole right in the center of it is actually still a living tree at the very top. And it has a ring that comes down with ribbons cascading down, which you may or may not have seen in the half hour that we were trying to get the class going. This is from Wisconsin in 1917. Yeah, it's huge. Look at all those kids. This is from Wales in the 1930s. This is some hippies on the East Coast just a couple years ago at like a Ren fair. And something I wanted to point out here is in a lot of these, you see everybody's got their ribbons and they're dancing around and spiraling and whatnot. In this picture, you can kind of see it on the pole. In this picture, you can really see it. If you can manage to get your dancers to actually move in a good pattern, you will braid the pattern down the outside of the pole. And so what we are literally looking at is the pole, which by some accounts represents phallic energy, virile energy, being dressed with these colorful ribbons and flowers, which represents fertility, goddess energy, the thing within which the phallus goes, the stuff, the energy. There are plenty of historians and witches and Wiccans and pagan authors who are like, nope, that's not what it means. People were just excited that the sun was back and they stuck a pole in the ground. Full stop. There is nothing about penises, so quit talking about it. And then there's other groups that are like, yes, it is. What? So there's conjecture around that. I think it is. I think it is a turgid symbol. And it is being dressed and decorated with all of these other symbols that are connected to all of these fertility goddesses and flower goddesses and all of that stuff. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a practitioner. Okay. Here's a gigantic, very nicely displayed maypole. And this is what a maypole, quote unquote, can look like at summer solstice, because maypoles are not just used at May Day, mostly they are, but they are also occasionally used at summer solstice as well. I just had to share that. So, maypoles, obviously a big deal with May Day and Beltane. Flowers, which we've talked about quite a bit. Bonfires, wicker man. Genitals, in case that wasn't already really obvious by now. Any kind of a depiction of a genital is a big deal. So, very briefly, here is a cauldron. This is an Iron Age cauldron that was fished up from the River Thames. Here is another cauldron. This is I actually have a note about this somewhere. This is the Gundestrup cauldron that was found in pieces and repaired to an extent. This was found in Denmark, but the figures are Celtic. It has a big rounded bottom. It's like 9 kilograms of silver. Get it? And then this is a Shiva lingam. And because I didn't want to actually show you guys vaginas and buttholes and penises, I'm sure you're relatively familiar. If not, turns out there's a lot of porn. So, like, enjoy. Prawn. Okay. But this is a Shiva lingam. And this is interpreted as just straight up the genitals of the god, and there are a lot of Hindus who are like, no, it is an abstract representation of the force, the energy itself. The upright part is the lingam, that is the thrusting force, and then the dish around it is the yoni. And when this is used in ceremony, a fluid is poured over it to create something called amrita, and it is water and milk, sugarcane juice, fruit juice, coconut, sugar, flower petals, and ghee, and oils, and unguents, and all sorts of delicious things are poured over it. It's very sweet, it's very milky, it's very watery, and it pours out the lip there at the right side, and that stuff is collected, and it's used to bless people, bless animals, bless property, bless the lands, all of that good stuff. Okay. And then, of course, obviously twins and couples. Twins connecting to Gemini, but also that twosome thing. And couples meaning whoever you're with. Seattle, you're freaky, and it's like, we're like the most poly city in the country. So couple as in whoever your group of bumping ugly helpers are. Whoever it is that you work with on that stuff. Okay, so our meditations. I'm going to scooch back really quickly just to look at this stuff one more time. I meant to put those slides in that other, whatever. This whole class, eh? Okay, so animal helpers that we can work with, obviously any kind of bull, cow, bison, ox, buffalo, anybody like that. Camels and doves really connect to Venus pretty closely. Horses and twin animals connect very closly to Gemini. These are some plant helpers that we can work with. Myrtle, cypress, rose in particular is really, really potent for Beltane season. But clovers and violets and really, honestly, anything that is in bloom wherever you are. And that actually brings me to something. Something that kind of gets left out with Beltane stuff is work with the local genii. And that is a magical concept about working with the spirits of the land where you are exactly. So that might require some research from you in terms of who was there before you and who or what were they worshiping. And is there a way that you can respectfully acknowledge those entities or archetypes? So that is really important. But we can also talk about the local genii of a place, of being the indigenous plants and the indigenous animals of a place as well. And so really being aware of that energy, fostering that stuff, kind of going back to our plant collecting stuff that we were talking about earlier of, is it Can I work with something that is an invasive species and I'm helping thin it out? Is there a way that I can work with indigenous species and help support them and build them up? All of that kind of stuff is going to be really potent Beltane magical work as well. Mineral helpers, copper, rose quartz, and emerald are my top 3 for working with for Beltane season. Food and drink, honestly, whatever is blooming and growing and edible, especially edible flowers, that's a really big deal. Honey, also a really big deal, and seeds, oat cakes as well. Incense, all kinds of stuff, but lots of flowers and flower-oriented scents. Sandalwood, agarwood, lemon, and oud, as well as benzoin, all really connect nicely to Gemini, so we might work with those a little bit later on in the season. We've seen our ritual forms, we've seen our symbols, and to our meditations for Beltane. What is the relationship between experiencing pleasure in your body and your vitality? What is that? Does it do anything for you? And if so, what? Just explore that concept. What is the relationship between experiencing pleasure in your body and your vitality? Describe 3 things that bring beauty or pleasure into your life. Whatever, doesn't matter what it is. Describe 5 ways that you are unique and beautiful. And I just heard you all go, you're lucky I didn't say 6. Okay. What comes to mind when you consider the phrase, the dance of life? Does that make you think of something? Do you feel something? Do you feel that phrase somewhere in your body? Are you moved to move in any particular way? What does that phrase do to you, and what does it do for you? All right, that brings us back to the beginning, and so let me go to this, and let me go to this. We did a little advocacy work in the last class. Here's a little more advocacy work for you in this. On the left, we have a short, very, very short list of food advocacy groups. Food is Power is a food desert and food access nonprofit that looks into food deserts around the country and helps people connect with groups that are attempting to eradicate that. If you are unfamiliar with a food desert, it is a place, usually in an urban setting, where the closest grocery store or the closest place to get fresh food is miles and miles and miles away. And there's a lot of politics and a lot of bullshit around that stuff. Big surprise, right? So Food is Power is a nonprofit that is attempting to work towards no more food deserts and easier and better access to food for all kinds of people in all walks of life. Grandma's House is a group here in Seattle, and they serve giant, hot, incredibly delicious meals to our houseless neighbors here in Seattle. They also put together really incredible care packages for those folks, and they try to have this offering. I want to say it's every single week. They definitely do a huge one at least once a month down in Pioneer Square, and they are attempting to get the money and the legal whatnottery all together to be able to buy or lease a permanent space, because they are a pop-up setup right now. So if that's something that is intriguing to you, go check it out. Seattle Community Fridge is a really dope movement that is working with businesses all across Seattle. They run from White Center all the way up to Northgate. They have 11 refrigerators so far, and these are refrigerators that are established outside of businesses that have power and all of that stuff, as well as like a pantry right next to them where people can leave food and people can go get food for free. So there's the refrigerator that has free food, and then a pantry that's right next to it that has free food. If you would like to donate to this program, if you would like to donate a refrigerator, if you'd like to host a refrigerator, get a hold of these guys. I think that this is just an incredibly cool movement, and it's really speaking to that idea of doing what you can where you are with what you have. And if you're not in the Seattle area, fridge is the US version. And in fact, they list these types of sites from all over the world. So wherever you are in America or wherever you are in the world, there's probably a free community refrigerator somewhere. And if not, these people can also help you figure out how to get started with something like that, including all the laws and legal shenanigans that go into offering free food, how to do it safely so that you're not hurting anybody or poisoning people with rotten food and all of that good stuff. So food advocacy groups there on the left. And on the right, we have groups that are working toward growing your own food and connecting people with locally produced food sources. So Tilth Alliance does a little bit of everything. They connect people, they advocate for things, they provide education, and they really connect farmers and gardeners and people who eat food. And you probably fall into one of those categories. They're all about stewardship of the land, about cooking food in different ways, just like all of this stuff, like food. Really, really cool stuff. Black Star Farmers is a nonprofit group that is Black and Indigenous led, and they are for the radical reclamation of land and food for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. They are all about stewardship, they are all about racial justice, and they are all about land and food sovereignty. And so their work right now is literally building gardens here in the Seattle area where it becomes a harvest garden, aka that food goes into homeless shelters and our houseless community and people who are at risk. Rather than folks going in like a pea patch, which apparently the word pea patch is something that only we Seattleites say. Everybody else calls it a community garden. We call it pea patch, just so you know. But it's a pea patch where you go and you do that work, but that food's going to get handed over to somebody else. The Beacon Food Forest, if you are or are not involved with this, the Beacon Food Forest is one of the largest, possibly the largest food forest in the country. It is 7 acres. It's up on Beacon Hill, and they do permaculture. They do food for the community. They have education. They teach people how to do all kinds of stuff, from grow things to build bee houses for pollinators and so much more. And this is another thing where if you don't have a food forest in your area, go check out this website, and they have information on how you can start and get involved with legislature for this type of stuff where you are. And last but not least, we have Local Harvest, and Local Harvest connects people with farms, CSAs, farmers markets, restaurants, buy your own grocery type, or pick your own food, and farmer stands and all of that kind of stuff here in Seattle as well as across the country. Food, people, we do need it. And it's kind of a big deal here at Beltane season. Patrons! Thank you so much, patrons. Thank you. Thank you for putting up with all this wacky stuff. I have a feeling I'm going to be teaching this class again and recording it and putting it up because I doubt that this recorded anywhere. So thanks for everybody. Thanks. I now am at 50 patrons. That is fucking wacky, you guys. That is super bizarro, and, it kind of freaks me out, so good job, you freaked me out. I said if we hit 50 patrons, I would start to put my experimental podcast up for the public, the new moon ones, and I have. The last new moon podcast is up and available. The podcast is called Spinning the Wheel. And the next New Moon podcast will be up in a couple of weeks. So exciting. Work with me! I've finally remembered to put a little bit of promo stuff in here for myself. So hooray! You can book a session with me. I read tarot. I do astrology. I also do consultation around spiritual practice and pagan practice, whether you want to work on integrating the Wheel of the Year into your spiritual practice, or you want a consultation on something, maybe you're working on a project and you want to get deeper into a subject, I can help you do some research. Or perhaps you are working on a tattoo and you want to do some more research on that. Anything along those lines, I'm really good at that type of stuff. In case you haven't noticed, I'm kind of into researching these things. So that is a way to work with me, is to book a session, and you can do that through my website. You can also join my Patreon, where you get so much. If you think this class has a lot of info, there's even more. We have all the commas you could possibly want. The podcasts that are not public, access to the tarot circle, which is our 2-hour tarot workshop that we do every month. I have office hours. I have boatloads of writing and a lot more. You can follow my Spinning the Wheel podcast, which is offered anywhere where fine podcasts are sold. You can go to my website and sign up for the newsletter. And follow me here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, literally all the social media formats. I'm there. Just look for me. Meagan Angus Witch, Meagan Angus in all places. Let me remember to ask you right now, please like this video, leave a comment if you could, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It helps with the Al Gore rhythms. And you know that Al Gore has no rhythm. He needs all the help he can get. I believe that that brings us to the literal end of this quite batshit class. We've made it. We lived. We lived. Okay, so this was a trial. And I hope you all have enjoyed. I know how I'm going to go release after this. Is there anything else? Oh, yes. Actually, you know what? There is something else. I am going to leave you with a little something something. So let me go to this. Hopefully I don't glitch everything out. Everything is okay. And let's see. This is a prayer to the horned god from Amergen the Bard of Milesians. I am a stag of 7 tines. I am a flood across a plain. I am a wind on a deep lake. I am a tear the sun lets fall. I am a hawk above the cliff. I am a thorn beneath the nail. I am a wonder among flowers. I am a wizard. Who but I sets the cool head aflame with smoke? I am a spear that roars for blood. I am a salmon in a pool. I am a lure from paradise. I am a hill where poets walk. I am a boar, ruthless and red. I am a breaker, threatening doom. I am a tide that drags to death. I am an infant. Who but I peeps from the unhewn dolmen arch? I am the womb of every holt. I am the blaze on every hill. I am the queen of every hive. I am the shield for every head. I am the tomb of every hope. Blessed be you all. Happy Beltane. Let's just get butt naked and pray. Do 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 do.